Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sasquatch Theory. In this video, we have Sharon from Oregon, and she wanted to share the strange activity that she has experienced in the area. Oregon certainly seems like a great area to experience Bigfoot activity, and I'm sure a lot of the locals that live there have heard strange noises coming from the mountains and have probably seen some strange things, to say the least. If you enjoy listening to Sasquatch Theory, please like and subscribe. And if you have an encounter that you would like to share with me here on the channel, please contact me sometime at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. Alright guys, let's dive straight into this next episode here on Sasquatch Theory. Alright Sharon, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Sharon, you had some experiences throughout your life. If you would, tell us a little bit about yourself and these encounters that you've had.
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you. When I first got married, we were on a farmhouse in Mount Scott, Oregon. And it was basically in the city, but it was a mountain. We lived at the bottom of this little mountain, and we had like 5 acres that went up. And it went up into a big wooded area up behind us called Happy Valley, Oregon. And we had this little farmhouse, and married my husband from college. I was, a city girl, but I wanted to live out and have farms and raise chickens, and we did that. And our first couple nights in that farmhouse, I heard coyotes in the night, and I woke my husband up and I said, "What is that?" My husband's like, "Oh, that's coyotes." He's from Oregon, Washington, the Pacific Northwest. He's like, "That's coyotes." I said, "Oh, I never heard that before." And it was real yipping and loud, really loud, like, like maybe something was getting attacked kind of feeling, that sounds. And, it went on maybe for about 4 minutes, and went back to bed. And the next night I heard them again, and I'm like, "Wait, they're out again." So go back to the screen door and listen. He goes, "Yeah, that they're out there. That sounds like babies, yipping for their parents or something." And boy, I was so excited because that was like nature to me, hearing that. And the next night I hear a sound, and I go to the back door, and I thought, I'm not going to get him on the third night. But the third night, I heard screaming like somebody was being tortured in the woods, like a woman screaming. And I can do the sound, but I won't do it because it's horrible. But it was 10 times louder than I can do, just radiating down from those 5 acres that we had. I'm like, what the heck was that? Those coyotes must have really got a chicken or something up there. So I, went back to bed. But the kids, I had 3 little kids, and 2 were in like preschool and kindergarten, and the third one was Brian. He was 3 years old, and I said, "Brian, you want to go for a walk today up in the woods?" We went up in the woods, and I went to right where I heard that sound coming from. Not the coyotes; they seemed like they were up behind my house, but the sound of this screaming woman was to the right of behind my house, but up in the woods. And we went up there, and sure enough, I saw a teepee up there of 3 sticks, and they were broken off big, maybe 8 feet, 9 feet tall, and, maybe 3 inches round. And I didn't know what it was. And I I saw a pillowcase up there and a blanket, and it was just shredded. It was just shredded, and it was feathers in there in that pillowcase, and it was just feathers all over the place. And I'm like, was that the chicken getting tortured or whatever? What was that? And my son's like, and I go, "Look at that teepee." And we're just walking around that area, and I personally thought it was a witchcraft or something, because it looked, like a peace sign type thing to me. And I'm thinking, oh, witchcraft, they break the signs of the cross off and put the cross upside down, that kind of thing. And I just thought, oh, people are doing witchcraft. So I actually, there was a little road that went down from that side of the mountain, and there was a little farmhouse down there. And I knocked on the door, and an old lady came to the door. And I said, "Did you hear somebody getting tortured last night?" And she said, "I sure did." She said, "I think somebody's doing witchcraft or something up there because I never heard anything like that. They're torturing an animal or doing something like that." This old lady. And she said, "I've heard it before too." And then that was the end of that. That was the end of it. I went home and never saw it again, never heard of it again, and never thought of it again. Never even thought about Bigfoot. And then we moved from there. We've moved 20, we're in our 29th move. We move every so many years, but we moved up to Alaska then, and my husband's in construction, and we were doing some buildings up there. Never had any we were way in the bush up in Galena, living on the Yukon up there. And then when we came down, we bought a home in Olalla, Washington, and that's on the Puget Sound. Um, and it's just pines. You are in pines, and every road is just big pines. Once in a while you'll see a bear cross in front of you. And we were there about, I don't know how long we were there, but we lived there 10 years. But this was more towards the beginning of when we lived there. Um, and this is strange. It was Halloween night. This is what sounded weird. And we heard we had another 5-acre farm, and we had beautiful cedar pines up the wood, pine trees up behind us. And it was a beautiful moon out. And my husband would even say to us, "Let's all go sit on the trampoline and look up at the sky." It was like a full moon on a Halloween night or something like that. And we heard people up in the woods, like people talking or chanting. And we heard like drum knocks, and we got quiet. And we're like, "What was that?" We heard drum knocks, and people, and I go, "You know what? They're probably doing witchcraft up there or something in our woods." And just as soon as I said that, we heard that scream again. That scream was so loud. The kids, everybody was like, "What in the world?" The drums stopped, the chattering, the kids or whoever was up there stopped, but the screaming of this woman being tortured was up there. And I got in my car. It was nighttime, but I drove up the road because it was a hill, it was a mountainous hill behind us again where we bought this other farm. And I drove up and I knocked on a door up towards that way, like a country home up that road. And I asked, "Did you hear that over there?" This screaming and people like with a drum beat and like singing. And they said the same thing, almost like what that lady said at the last time. The lady goes, "I think, it's Halloween night. People are out there probably doing weird things." And she said, I didn't hear anything though. And this was, in the nighttime, but the kids weren't even put to bed yet. But we just let it go, and that was the end of it. But I thought people were on my property. That's why I drove up there, and I heard that scream, and that's what scared me, that they were killing somebody up there on a full moon or something. I didn't know, and that was the end of it. We let it go. Another thing that happened is, this is just coming to mind, is next door we had loggers that lived next door, and they were like those, kind of, I want to say, like the toothless guys with I think they were pretty much into drugs, the meth type people. And they had a beautiful mom that lived there, and she was a llama rescue lady that lived next to us, and she had loads of llamas. Well, one day, um, one of those logger guys knocked on the door and said, "Did you see anything over here? Something killed one of our llamas. It's just shredded." And uh, they thought it was a cougar. And my husband got his gun. They all got their guns, and they went up in the woods looking for a possible cougar, mountain lion. And we never saw anything of that. But that's just another notation of something that could have happened, by a Bigfoot. I don't know. But that was the end of all that activity at that farm. And then that was in 2001. Okay. And the first one was in 1990. or so around. And then this one was in 2001. And now we're skipping up to 2021. My son Brian, he's the little boy I took up in the woods when we were touching all that stuff up there with that teepee, when we heard those first sounds at the little farmhouse. He was 3 then, but now he was 30 when he had this experience, and he became a very good mountain climber, like climbs Mount Rainier and those bigger mountains in the United States. And a girl found out he was a mountaineer, and she said, "Will you take me in to the Washington woods?" She was from Argentina. And he said, "Sure." So they went on a 2-day hike in to Elgin Lake in Washington. He lives over in Washington, outside of Seattle. So he does all that climbing and hiking over that way in those mountains by Leavenworth and up those mountains, going out Highway 90. And he said, "Mom, we took a 2-day hike in, and when we got in, we pitched a tent up." And he said, "The lake's down over here." He said, "I've never been here, but I'm following my GPS of what we can do." He said, "And the sun's going to set across Lake Elgin on these mountains." He said, "Let's go watch the sunset before we, set in our tents." So they had about, 12 or 13-hour hike into that area. It was a 2-day hike into Lake Elgin. Because I was saying, "Brian, you got to take me there." He goes, "Mom, you'll never make it. You'll never make it." So he's telling the story, and he said, we set up tent, and he said, "Look, there's an arrow. It was like carved into a rock. It was a rocky, very rocky area." And he said, "I guess we follow this way. Maybe there's a good lookout point or something like that." So they followed that arrow. And he said, "Mom, there were two shaman rocks carved out." He didn't tell me they were shaman rocks. I did, because I study that kind of stuff, the American Indian things. And he said, "Yeah, they were like 2 big rocks carved out. And then right in front of those was a giant triangle rock that was chipped and carved into a triangle, just looking straight towards that mountain where the sun was setting." And he said, "Hey, let's just sit in this and enjoy what we see, as the sun goes down." And as soon as they sat in those shaman rocks, the girl looks at my son Brian, I don't know what her name was, and she said, "Did you just put this on my lap?" And he goes, "What?" And she goes, "These 3 sticks." And it was 3 sticks, and he picked them up, and they smelled them, and they were burnt incense sticks. And she's going, "Yeah, right." And he's going, "No, you're lying. You're kid." They thought they were kidding each other. Well, they didn't know what that was, so they just tossed the sticks, and the sun went down. And as the sun went down, this spotlight showed up in the mountains across Lake Elgin, maybe about a half a mile across. And she's like, "Look, there's a light, and it's getting brighter." He's like, "Wow, what would the light be doing over there?" He goes, "There's no roads here. There's nothing up here." And the light started coming across the lake. And as it came across the lake, it turned into a triangle of 3 orbs. It was one big orb, and then it would go into 3. And he said, "It just looked like gel, Mom, like," and go into 3 like a triangle, and then come back into 1. And it was coming across the lake. And he said, "Mom, it was probably a half a football field away." Um, we're looking, and she's getting scared, and she's like, "We need to go. We need to go." And he goes, "No, this could be like a little UFO experience. Let's just see what happens." Because my husband and I, we watch shows, and we enjoy the UFO stuff. When I'm at his house, it's like, "Hey, you want to binge watch something?" But we never watched Bigfoot things or anything like that. But so he's like, "Let's just see what happens." So they're sitting there, and the orbs got closer, and then they just boom disappeared. And he said, "I heard this laughing, Mom, just like Chewbacca." That's what he heard. And then he said, "Okay, I've seen enough. This is a little scary. Let's, he didn't say scary because he didn't want to scare the girl, but he's like, yeah, okay, let's go back to the tent." And he said, "Mom, my hair on my neck was standing up, and I'm walking to the tent." And he said, "We get to the tent, which is, just a few yards away around the bend." He said there was a herd of doll sheep around our tent, about 20 to 25 doll sheep with their babies, just huddled around our tent, and they let us come there. We could pet their babies, and we forgot about the Bigfoot, or about this experience we had. We didn't even think about it being Bigfoot. And they're petting the sheep, and they calmed down, and they both went in the tent to sleep, and she went right to sleep, but he keeps a gun under his pillow for bears, and he finally fell asleep about midnight because he was still thinking about all this lights and the sheep around, and the sheep kind of wandered off, and as he was falling asleep, he rolled over on his side, and his back was touching the side of the tent, and he said, "Mom, I felt a hand just pat me on the back like twice, like pat me." And he woke up, he's looking at the girl, she's sound asleep. He's thinking, well, maybe there's a sheep sleeping back next to me, it's okay, or whatever. He rolled back over, and as soon as he fell back asleep again, he felt that tapping twice on his back again, a tapping like that. He got his gun, unzipped it, like, what the? Looking out, and she's like, what's going on? He's like, something tapped me on the back twice now, and the sheep are gone. They're not here anymore. And I don't know what that was. So he put the gun back in, and nobody was out there. He zipped the tent up, and they went to sleep, and that was the end of their experience. So after that, he told us that about a year ago, I started watching the Bigfoot experiences, and boy, lo and behold, everything he's experienced is out there on your show, on everybody's show. And so he didn't want to talk about it very much, but he has a new girlfriend, and we were in the Tri-Cities in October. We go back and forth every weekend, and his girlfriend's family have a cabin on Priest Lake in Idaho, and that's a good drive up in the backwoods of Idaho also. And he was over there with her, spending a week over there, and every day they went for a beautiful walk around the lake, and there's a beautiful trail behind, by the wood ridge, and all these homes are around the lake, but you walk the wood ridge line around the lake. And he said, Mom, we were hearing whoop whoop every time, we would be going on this walk, we'd hear whoop. And she would say, you know what? I've been here 7 years, and I've been walking around this lake for 7 years, and I have never heard dogs or animals barking like that, making those sounds. I've never heard that before. And he didn't say anything, because since then he and I have talked about, I'll like send him a video of whooping or things that, that I'm interested in, but he's like, oh, cool, Mom, but he doesn't really discuss it, So he told me that, but so then he and his girlfriend had come to the house, and that's when he told me that, but not around his girlfriend. He didn't tell me that around his girlfriend, but she and he told me this when they came in the door. He said, Mom, we were hiking the last day before we came here. We were hiking yesterday, up a trailhead, off of Priest Lake, and it was a parking lot, and, where the rangers are, and, you can go up this trailhead. He said, we took a really nice hike, and as we were coming out, we heard chattering, like people talking, but it was like monkeys and gorillas. And I did the sound of what that monkey and gorilla and that chattering is. And she's like, yes, that was it. What was that? What was that? And I'm saying, that was probably the Bigfoot chattering. She goes, Bigfoot? What are we talking about here, Brian? And then I was mentioning to him, Brian, I've been watching videos where American Indians say you could be, if you ever touch anything of theirs, you could be marked, and then you could have, further experiences. And his girlfriend's going, marked? What are we talking about, marked, Brian? And she's only with him like 2 months. So she's like, is this a woman? Is your mom crazy, or are you guys weird? And he's behind her going like over his neck, like, stop, don't talk about it. She's a real scaredy cat. She's a real city girl. but they live, they go to Priest Lake every summer and live out in that wilderness for weeks. But um, so he told me about when they were coming down from this hike. He said, when we were coming from the hike, this chattering was happening. And as we got to the parking lot, we just couldn't stop listening to it. We're just looking up in the woods because the whole woods was chattering with this, like not growling, but chattering and monkey sounds. And he said a forest ranger pulled up as she was ready to go up the trail. She stopped with us and she said, "What in the world? I've never heard that sound up in these woods." And he's like, "I don't know. I don't know." He didn't say Bigfoot or anything because he just doesn't talk about it. And so then when he came to the house, he was telling me, and there his girlfriend is sitting listening. And then I brought up the things that I remembered from when we lived on the farmhouse and he was a little boy and we were touching those feathers that were all shredded. And I said, maybe a chicken was killed here, but I saw a shredded pillow and a shredded blanket. And then I told him, maybe you've been, we touched that thing and you touched those incense, Brian, maybe you're marked. So that was the end of that. And then he told me again another story. Whenever he and her come out to visit, we live in real agricultural area. I mean, it's apples and cherries and peaches and they just walk through the orchards and then you can walk up these little bluffs. It's just like people take these beautiful trails up these bluffs and you're just looking over miles and miles of farm acreage of these orchards. And she said, he and she said, "You know what? When we were coming down tonight, it's so dark here, Mrs. Griswold." She said, "It's so dark you can't see anything here. There's no street lights on your streets." And when we're coming down, we take a walk up and watch the sunset. By the time we come down, it's pretty dark. And Brian told me the rest of the story. He said, uh, we're coming down from the hill and an orb, one of those orbs was over them in front of them like a football field away. And they're coming down from one of these bluffs. We call it Snake Hill because the trail is a big S that you come down. And they're seeing this thing in front of them the whole time. And this coming down, it's 20-minute walk. They're seeing this orb in the air and they get down onto the main road walking towards our house and they turn the corner and they see the orb go right over my backyard and just disappear. And he goes, "I don't know what that was either, Mom, but he just doesn't go into it, but these are the things he tells me." And so I think that's all my stories that I can relate, but that's all I have to share. But I think that's Bigfoot activity, everything. What do you think, Miguel?
It sounds like Bigfoot activity to me. Um, when you heard the sounds of the woman screaming, you don't have to reenact it, but like, what did it sound like? Just like a woman screaming, being tortured?
It sounded either like a wild cat, and we had chickens and roosters. Roosters can make really strange, loud screams too. It sounded either like a cougar or a cat being mauled, or a cat mauling another animal, or something mauling an animal. The screaming, but to me, it sounded like a woman being tortured in the woods. That I had to go up there and see what the heck. But I wasn't going to go in the middle of the night. I went the next morning and went right to that spot, and that's where I saw that teepee.
Okay. So when you
Not
say,
like somebody lived in it. Nobody lived in it. It was just sticks, like three broken sticks, but it
okay.
looked like in the shape of a teepee.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. And when you say up there, you mean like up on a mountain or just a big hill or ridge?
Well, Mount Scott. We lived at the base of a mountain called Mount Scott. It was a little mountain of all pines. And then where we lived in Olalla, that was a mountain of big, tall cedars, big cedar trees
Okay.
when I heard the screaming.
Yeah, and the Sasquatch like to hang out in the pines. You found the teepee structure when you went up there, is that correct?
Yes, yes. And that's, I never even thought or anything about Bigfoot. I thought somebody's doing evil things up here. That's what it seemed like because I heard the screaming. You think they're killing somebody or, like human sacrifice or something. That's what it sounded like to me, like so evil, scary. And it's a woman, but I didn't call the cops or anything. I just went and asked that when I went up there and I saw there was a little shack in the woods down below that woods. I asked that woman, "Do you ever hear that noise?" She said, "Yes, I heard it last night. But I think it's two girls that live down below or something. They must be going up there and doing witchcraft or something." That's what she told me. But now that I listen to podcasts and read books, that structure was definitely a, a Bigfoot structure. That was too tall, and the way they were broken off and 3 feet around. But I'm thinking the way it was made, like one stick was going straight down, and then the two made an X across that straight down stick. The two made an X, but the bigger part of the sticks were looking like a teepee from the bottom,
Yeah.
the teepee structure.
And Mount Scott, that's an old volcano, isn't it?
That I don't know. I mean, it's just a little hill that we had this little couple farms that lived that were there, and we were young and married, and we bought this old farm and we're fixing it up, and we fixed it up and then moved on, and we didn't stay there. But
Okay.
it's they're
Is
like,
it in
yeah.
Klamath County? Is that correct?
Yes, Clackamas.
Oh,
Clackamas County.
okay. Yeah, I'm looking it up right now, and it says it's a small stratovolcano, and it's approximately 420,000 years old. And I guess it's close to Crater Lake National Park, perhaps.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yep. Crater Lake. My husband took me there once to see it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that looks like a squatchy area, and there certainly is a lot of pines there. And to me, it looks like a mountain. You say it's kind of small, but I'm not used to the area, so I'm sure there's bigger mountains around.
Yeah. Well, we have Mount Hood and we have like sisters and things like that around us, the big mountains. But everywhere around Portland is more like bluff mountain. They're not too high, but they're woodsy. Everything's covered in pines if it is an area. And
Yeah.
the thing about being in Oregon, you can be in the city, but you can be walking in the city, but you look to the right and there's 400 feet wide, like a football field wide of forest right next to you. And it'll say, beware duck crossing or something like that. There's all kinds of natural land in Oregon when you're walking around. And it's funny because when we moved to that little farmhouse, my husband said, "Hey, don't ever go down this street." When we first moved to the town, we weren't at that farmhouse. We were in Gresham, Oregon. And he said, "This is a really bad part of town, Sharon. Don't ever drive down here." And wouldn't you know it, a year later, we bought a farmhouse just right from those sleazy city streets in Portland is this Mount Scott. And it was all nature up in there, just pure nature, creeks, but it wasn't a big area, but it did go back up over into a place called Happy Valley, and that was all natural, big natural land there, but it's all developed now. It's all developed, that Happy Valley area.
Yeah. And do you know if there is a history of witchcraft being done there, like occult groups?
Oh no, I don't think so. No, I wouldn't think anything. I don't follow it, but I have never heard anything in my woods except that screaming and those coyotes. And I heard coyotes after that once in a while, but never like I heard them chanting or whatever they do, yipping the 2 nights before I heard that woman screaming in the woods. That that was crazy that I heard that because I know what coyotes sound like now, and you hear the yipping and the chattering or whatever they do because we've always lived out since then. Um, but that night, those 2 nights, it was super loud, and then that next night, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is really loud tonight. What are they killing? And then it was the screaming that I heard. I didn't hear any coyotes. I just heard a woman screaming, and it wasn't like help or anything like that. Just like you're being tortured.
Yeah. And I can tell that stuck with you for a long time. You probably think about it almost every day, huh?
No, I didn't because I I you know what? If I would have known about Bigfoot, I would be thinking about it every day because since then I think about it. I was that close. And in my Olala house, the second farmhouse that had the 5 acres with the cedars, that was the same sound that somebody was being tortured, a woman screaming. And I was wondering now that I listen to podcasts, do you think possibly people could have been up there like on that Halloween night with the full moon and doing some kind of drum beat and singing witchcraft? And then the Bigfoot did that screaming like, get the heck out of these woods. I don't want you here.
Yeah, it could be possible. I mean, to me, it does sound like Sasquatch activity, and I just think it's strange that when you were in Washington, you heard the drum knocks and the screams once again. I kind of feel like it followed you, or the activities attached to you in some way, shape, or form.
I think so. I don't know. I feel like I'm an empath. I can feel people's that aura around people. And that's why I haven't gone anywhere um in the woods by myself now that I'm watching shows. I thought, boy, I'm going to get out there, but no way. I'm going to join a club. We're moving to Sisters, Oregon to do a job in 2 months. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is like total Bigfoot country. And I'm going to join a club or something to go hiking. My husband and I can go, but he's working all the time. But I'm 67 and I could, at least go out with people and do my own little researching and not open my mouth, but just look around and get a feel for out there because everybody says, oh, you're going to be loving Sisters. It's just total outdoors, extreme rock climbing, mountains, hiking, rafting. So I'm looking forward to being out there, but I don't know how I'm going to go about it. I don't know if I should be gifting or doing things like that. You want to hear another story that I think is really interesting? And I always thought it was an angel that did this because I believe in angels. But my husband knows that I love looking for like arrowheads and just going out there where ancient civilizations could live. And I'll tell you, when you're in this area of the Tri-Cities, Moses Lake, Central Washington, it's ancient land, and it's like stripped. It's an ancient riverbed that's called the Columbia Basin River Basin. And I've always felt driving through this area because my husband's from this area. But I said, I'll never live here because I'm from Pennsylvania where it's really green. And I go, I could never live on this land. It's so barren, but it's farmland too. It's mostly farmland. But I feel that ancient, it's like the Columbia Gorge. We live right off the Columbia Gorge, and there's ancient tree. You can walk just natural where the ancient trees, you know what they're called? What do they call those ones that are like 10,000 years old and you can look at their roots and they've turned to rock?
The
Fossils.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they're like fossils, and you can walk this little trail right off the Columbia Gorge. It's in Vantage, Washington, and it could be on the Oregon side though, because the river separates Oregon from Washington. But um, it's old because those old trees are like they're saying they're like 50,000 or a million years old. I don't know how they do that, but I always felt that was ancient. And then this used to be trees here at one time, I guess, because it's in the ground. All those roots are just rock roots of these giant trees. And no, they're not, like advertised. You just have to know to go there with people that are like rock hounders and stuff like that. And so my husband always takes me, instead of giving me a gift, he gifts me to look for maybe an ancient culture. He'll look on a satellite dish, and then we'll see like an ancient form where there were rock formations, and then we go there, and it takes you 4 hours to drive 12 hours. That's how rocky the area is that you're driving. We were in Arizona at that time. But anyway, we were living over this way. We moved 27 times, so I'm going to sound confusing, but we were in a place called Ancient Lakes, and that's outside of Moses Lake. We were building an Intel. My husband builds data centers, and we were building a Microsoft over there in Quincy, and there's a lake there, and the guy said, "Hey, I'm finding big like warhead pieces," and he told us where to go, and we went looking and didn't find anything. And I remember it was Easter Sunday, and my son and my husband said, "I'm gifting you today. We're going to take you looking for some arrowheads." He said, "You can walk up by these ancient lakes where Indians would shoot their arrows when the animals are coming to feed, and then we can go along that lake and look for arrowheads." Well, we looked and looked and looked, and every single thing looked like an arrowhead. It looked like arrowhead because it was that kind of shale. You know what I mean? That pointy stuff that you think, "Oh, I found one," and it's just a piece of broken shale.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we went down into the ancient lakes, and this was 4 hours of searching and nothing, just our heads down looking, and we're coming up an animal trail, and my son goes up first. This is Brian, the one that had the Bigfoot experiences. And he's walking up, and he's like, let's go. And he's yelling down the lake, "We're leaving." And I go, "Keep looking." And, they're looking up that trail, and it's just an animal trail that's only about 2 feet wide that goes down to that water. And it was muddy, that real powdery, silty mud that's out this way. That's an old river basin here. And everybody's looking and looking down at the top of the hill for me, and I'm coming up, and I'm looking, and I'm right behind him, just about 4 minutes, and I look down, and I see something looked like a white arrowhead, but it was almost white. And I'm like, this looks like it could be something. It had like chipped edges on the tip, It was white. It was like a pink. It was like a pink agate. But it had like white edges on the tip, like were chipped out, where that would go into the animal, the tip. And then the back wasn't like these 200-year-old, because I'm from Pennsylvania. A lot of our stuff over there is like 200 or 300 years old. This thing, I never seen an arrowhead like that. It was oval and real pointy. And in the back, it looked like somebody swiped it with the finger, but it was chipped out. But you could place like a finger or a stick in the back of it, and then wrap your sinew or whatever around your stick around that arrowhead. And I took it to my son and my husband. He goes, they're like, "Mom, that's something. That is something. Look how it's chipped out." And then I took it to a guy that worked at a university, and we were on government land, of course. And I'm thinking, no way am I giving this thing up. But he was pretty cool about it. I showed him this, and I go, "I'm trying to chip this white stuff off the edge and get it clean." He goes, Don't clean that." He said, "This is prehistoric stuff." He said, "This is a Clovis point." He said, "This is Clovis point, and I really believe this is petrified blood around the edge of that Clovis point, and some lichens must have grew over that petrified blood or whatever." And I still have that. It's in my purse right now. I keep that with me at all times.
Yeah, that is
Because
interesting.
but I felt they walked right there, and it was standing in broad daylight, sitting in front of me on top of all that dirty, fuzzy, fluffy dirt. Why didn't my son see it? And why didn't my husband see it? Why did I get to see it? Because I do have the desire. And I always thought that was an angel, but who knows? Maybe that was a Bigfoot. I believe they're ancient. I do believe they're ancient, just from listening and what they are like. And I don't know if you said that. I listened to you yesterday, and you said to somebody, how can they be satanic when they have children and they love their children? And You know what I mean? They have families.
Yep, and they've saved people from danger many times, so it's hard to say. Whenever I seen the juvenile here where I live, he was in the woods. I was walking back to my place, and I saw him go on all fours, hide behind a tree, and then he stepped out, and I got a good look at him for like 5 to 7 seconds, and then he dipped down behind the tree, and he was gone. But I went back the next day, and I was just trying to see if I could find any tracks, any evidence, or just see him again. Right there where he hid behind the tree, there was this large Clovis arrowhead, and it was just really
No
strange.
way.
Mm-hmm.
A
Yeah.
Clovis.
Yeah. I mean, part of it was in the ground and part of it was sticking out. When I first saw it, I was like, no, no way, that's an arrowhead. And even when I pulled it out, it kind of looked like a jagged rock, but as I started cleaning it off, it was like perfect. And that's where all the deer
Wow.
cross too. All the turkeys cross right there. So I feel like there is
Yes.
a physical presence to these creatures. They do use deer trails or game trails, and they hide, they eat food, and I don't know. I kind of thought maybe they use tools because when people describe the rock clacking, they're out there clacking rocks, and if you listen to someone make arrowheads, that's exactly what it sounds like.
Yes. Now that you say that, that's right. It does that click, the way they chip that agate.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that is interesting. And you never know. I mean, there's probably some type of supernatural connection with finding arrowheads. I've heard people say that, they found arrowheads and they brought them home and then they started having like paranormal activity, like they angered the spirits. But sometimes, you're meant to find it.
Yeah, I think that was a true gift. I mean, I could feel I was gifted that. I really feel because every time I would go into that area, I didn't live, like I told you, my husband, we lived back and forth. And when he lived in a trailer out that way, and I actually stayed with him then. That's why he was taking me around. But I would always say, this is an old area, Wade. This is really old. And he's like, well, okay, it doesn't, nothing, he just doesn't care about that. He just listens. But um, I did research that area, which was the Moses Lake. There's a name for that area, and I don't know what it's called in that area, but in all the history of recorded history of what has been found from the Clovis area is only about a few miles away, probably 50 miles away. And I don't know if it was by Lake Chelan or somewhere like that, because we're not far from Lake Chelan. I don't know if you know that area. It's by Leavenworth, Washington.
No, I'm
That's a
not
big,
too
big,
familiar with the
Bigfoot
area.
area. Okay, it's Pacific Northwest, but there's only been 3 Clovis points and 2 mastodon bones that were made into the spear for the Clovis point. That's what they found in like a grave or in the dirt. They found like 2 spears and 3 Clovis points that have been found in there. And I'm thinking, boy, I don't want to give mine up because, I feel mine is a personal thing and I don't care about, what the government's going to think or not. I really believe that was a personal gift that was given me. And, I always think, do I want to put it on a necklace and make it visible, or do I want to keep it in my special bag and just keep it private because that was special to me when I found that?
Yeah, yeah, that is interesting. And what did your son describe whenever he found the symbols on the shaman rocks?
He didn't see any symbols. He only saw an arrow. And I don't know if it was a normal looking arrow. It just looked like a line with a one side arrow. I can't remember exactly, but he knew it was a petroglyph carved into that rock to go that way. It wasn't something that the government or the lakes, the land bureau did. This was, he said, Mom, this was a petroglyph because we go petroglyph looking all the time. He, me, and my husband, we go. And then he said, and it pointed right to where those 2 rocks were carved out. He said it looked just like two benches that were carved out for your butt to sit down in. And then we sat down, and then when we sat, we saw this triangle rock right out in front of us pointing across the lake. And he said that's where the light came from.
Yeah. Well, that definitely sounds like Sasquatch activity that you mentioned earlier, as far as like the Chewbacca sound, the strange chattering. Your son saw an orb, and he said he felt something touch him. It's hard to say what that is, but definitely, I don't know, something strange up there. I can't say that's
I
Bigfoot.
think it was a juvenile
Oh
because
yeah,
he did say there was mind speak. This is another thing I forgot. He goes, Mom, when I started walking away and I was saying, okay, we'll go, he said to the girl, okay, let's go back to the tent. I've had enough, He heard mind speak saying, I want you to see me. I want you to see me. And he's going, no, 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 I don't want to see you. This is enough. No, nope, this is enough. And that's when his hair was sticking up. And then that was in his mind until he saw the sheep. And once he saw the sheep, he got really calm. And that was all dissipated into petting the sheep. And little babies were just at their knee. And the mommies are letting them pet their babies. And they just thought it was the coolest thing ever. But he did say a month before all this activity happened, he did watch a documentary about how Bigfoot can be present and not just hairy. He saw like a documentary about orbs and you can hear things and you can see things but not really see them. They're there. And he said, Mom, I think that's what was happening. I was having a Bigfoot experience even though I didn't see the hairy guy. And he said, when that documentary, the why I wasn't scared was it was saying that a lot of times they'll joke with you and they'll prank with you and they'll put things in your coffee cup or in this and that. And he said, I think that's what happened when the incense got put on that girl's lap. They were toying with us and kind of letting us know they were there. And then they're giggling. That wouldn't be scary, but it scared him. That's when he heard that. He said, okay, let's go back to the tent. But then right after that, he's saying, hearing in his brain, I want you to see me. I want you to see me. And he's like, no, 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 no. He kept saying, no, 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 no. I've had enough. And he couldn't go any further with wanting to, because at first he was like, hey, this could be UFO stuff. But he had enough.
yeah. Well, Mount Rainier, that's an active area. Ape Canyon, and many other mountain ranges in Washington and the Oregon area. So, I mean, I wouldn't doubt it. They're definitely up there.
Oh, yeah. And he's climbed Rainier and Mount Hood several times. But yeah, that's all the activity. But I always tell him, now you're taking me up somewhere. You and me are going to go when I go to Sisters. You're coming over there and we're going to go because you bring him in, Brian.
Yeah.
He doesn't, he just kind of giggles like, oh, whatever, Mom. But it's funny that he doesn't get into it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Having those experiences, like all that whooping for 7 days. He said, Mom, we heard whooping every day we walked around that Priest Lake. And she says, I have never heard dogs howl and bark whoop like this. And he didn't say anything because maybe he didn't know what it was either until I told him. But I'm pretty sure he's been watching a few things since, but he's kind of with her now and he doesn't want to bring anything up about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't blame him. And it's good that he has somebody that he can talk to about this. And it's good to talk to family, but most families don't believe, their siblings or other family members when they tell them about the activity. So I'm glad you guys have a connection like that and you're able to share the information.
Thank you. His sibling, I mentioned it to her and then she said, okay, you tell me your story, Brian, I'll listen to it. But she's like, you were on acid, you were doing drugs. That does not happen. God would not allow creatures to be born. We're all very religious, but she's like, you know, straight down, there's nothing out of the ordinary that God has created if we don't know about it. That's how she thinks. And, she's hard to wrap her head around angels. She's like, no, it's only through the Holy Ghost things happen, Mom. I'm like, no, we all have angels. We come to earth with them. I just feel that. I know that. But she's pretty logistic, you know, and they're campers. And I don't bring it up, but we went hiking the other night the other day at Christmas, we were over there and they live on a lake, Liberty Lake, and they're like, Mom, we're going to go on a beautiful hike up in the lake. And there was this stream, and I'm looking for broken branches and things like that. And out of the blue, I take the kids all down. I'm like, hey, let's go walk around this stream. And there's a mountain going up from the stream, and I hear whoop. Her husband went up there and was freaking me out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my I got all scared, excited, but I didn't want to let the kids know because they're campers and I don't want them to know the Bigfoot stories and all that. They'll be scaredy cats. Some kids, it seems like the kids in the South and all that know about it and they hear about it, and they hear about it out here, but people in the Pacific Northwest know about it. Like one kid came up to me at Halloween and my grandson said, look, Nana, my buddy's a Bigfoot. And I go, do you know about Bigfoot? And he goes, no, I don't know anything. And I started just saying a few things about him. And my grandson's eyes started getting really wide. And I thought, you better not go there with little kids. Just leave it go. It's, let them go camping. And I do tell her, keep your kids close. I believe they're good, but you never know. You never know. There's bad ones too. What could happen?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Sharon. Well, I think that pretty well covers all your family's experiences, and that answers most of my questions that I had for your story.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate you calling me back and making this story a reality for others. I'm going to be interested if you do play it, what other people's experiences are from what my comments are. Because I never really thought in a million years what I heard up in the woods was that. But then when you hear somebody else tell the story, hey, I heard that too. Never thinking of it, what it could be. So, yeah, more and more is getting out there, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Miguel.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sharon. And if you experience or encounter anything else, certainly get a hold of me.
Will do. You have a great day. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too. Take care, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, Sharon, thank you very much for sharing your encounters and experiences. And I know after we did this interview, Sharon contacted me and said that she also had a UFO encounter that she forgot to mention, and I was just never able to get back with her. So I just wanted to mention that she has had UFO activity, and maybe it's all tied in together. It's really hard to say. We talk a lot about that here on the channel, but as you guys know, I mainly focus on physical evidence and our own 3D realm, but that's why the channel's called Sasquatch Theory. We talk about it nonetheless. So there it is, guys. But yeah, if you have a Bigfoot encounter that you would like to share with me here on the channel, please contact me sometime at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. And if you guys enjoy watching Sasquatch Theory, please be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you everyone for watching. Take care and be safe.